Sawadee-kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and we're going to be studying Chapter 10 of our book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. In this class, I'm going to teach you what is merit. This is essentially a wholesome type of Kamma because you learned about wholesome and unwholesome Kamma last week. This is wholesome Kamma that is generated and needs to be understood and practiced in order to be able to make one's way to enlightenment. I'm going to share with you guys what this is and how to practice it. And we're going to be exploring a lot of the words of the Buddha on this topic. So welcome to our class today. I'm really pleased to see all of you guys here, whether you're joining on Facebook, YouTube, or on Zoom. And at the same time, I'd like to invite you to join for meditation because we start each class with a meditation. I'm going to start by easing us into meditation with some chanting. Then I'm going to come in with some guidance. There'll be a period of time where we're just meditating together. Then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And then that's where I'll start our class today, helping you to understand what is merit and why this is important for your journey to enlightenment. So if you'd like to join for meditation, you can take a position either seated, lying, or standing. These work out really well for online learning. And if you'd like to see these chants, they're on our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. You can click on free books, and down towards the bottom, you'll see the daily chanting sheet. These aren't a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship or anything like that. It just literally helps to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Hotang Mahakawanhang Apivateyami Sawakato Mahakawata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakatoro Kavitu Anutero Purisa Dhammasati Satatawa Manusanam Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาโพตังมหาเขวันังอาภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนัมสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสานามาสติสตาตาวามานุสรังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you've been joining regularly. Welcome to our class today. I'm going to be helping you understand the topic of what is merit. This is an important topic to understand on your way to enlightenment, and it's something that the Buddha taught that an individual would need to practice and develop in order to be able to make their way to enlightenment. In order to understand this topic of what is merit, it's important for a student to have first understood the Four Noble Truths and the natural law of Kamma. I've already taught these previously in this particular program, but what I'm going to do is just give like a brief little recap for anybody who maybe hasn't learned that with me yet. And those of you guys that have learned it, it'll be a nice little refresher for you. If you remember back to the Four Noble Truths, in 4 simple statements, the Buddha is helping you to understand the problem, the cause, the elimination, and the path forward. What is the problem that a human being is experiencing? The problem is the discontent feelings, the conditional feelings, the pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. The mind basing its inner feelings on some condition. So the mind's going up and down and up and down. The cause of this problem is craving, desire, attachment. The mind is longing, yearning, craving for things to be permanent. The mind has this outward seeking and searching for satisfaction. It's looking external for these pleasant feelings. So the mind longs and yearns. It almost has this unquenchable thirst, thinking that something external is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind craves this permanence when you live in an impermanent world. And you can see this through your own experiences where your mind is longing, yearning, and you get what you want. You get pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, and others. But when the mind doesn't get what it wants, it gets painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. And as long as the mind has this craving and longing, yearning, the mind pulling toward the objects of its affection, wanting and expecting things to be a certain way, it can't be permanently happy, because in some situations you're going to get what you want, and in other situations you're not going to get what you want. So therefore, the mind's going to be constantly going up and down and up and down. And even those conditioned pleasant feelings, they're ultimately unsatisfactory and unfulfilling because they're only temporary. The mind will base its inner feelings, say, on the sun. And if you get so happy when it's sunny, well, when it rains, you'll be sad or frustrated. Or if you get so happy when your bank account is a certain balance, then when it goes below that, you'll get frustrated or agitated or annoyed. So as long as the mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition, something external, then it's going to keep experiencing difficulties and struggles over and over and over again. And when the mind is experiencing this, what it's typically going to do is, when it has those painful feelings, it will push people away or push the situation away. This is called aversion. You might have pushed friends or family out of your life, thinking that that solves the problem. But you can see it didn't solve the problem, because your mind still gets angry or irritated or annoyed. If pushing this person away was actually going to solve the problem, you wouldn't actually get irritated or frustrated any longer. So the mind perceives the problem to be external, that the mind thinks that this person or this situation is causing the problem, so it will push it away, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But you can see it didn't solve the problem, because the mind still experiences discontentedness. Or you might experience where the mind is being bitter and harsh and hostile through your intentions, speech, and actions, becoming unskillful, having bitterness and animosity towards others. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, thinking that this is going to solve your problems, trying to force this individual through fear to do things your way. Or the third thing the mind will do when it falsely understands the cause of the problem is it will put its expectations on others, trying to control others to do things your way. And as long as the mind's doing this, an individual is going to feel pressured, and they might choose to leave out of your life. You can't live harmoniously with all beings as long as there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind, where there's these wants and expectations, because the mind is wanting things to be a certain way. And it can only get that in certain situations. And then there's other situations where the mind can't get that. So it's pushing people away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile, and putting your expectations on people. And now individuals in your life, you can't live harmoniously with them. So the way to solve this is in the third noble truth, where the Buddha teaches you to eliminate your cravings, your desires, your attachment, the longing, the yearning, the basing your inner feelings on some condition, where you need to learn how to walk this middle way, where you can choose to make wise decisions about moving forward with certain goals, objectives, or interests in your life, but you're not basing your inner feelings on whether you accomplish those things or not. That you're wisely choosing to walk forward towards certain goals and objectives. Because if you're chasing after things, your mind's not going to be permanently peaceful and joyful there. But if your mind's all the way on the other side, where it's dull and lethargic and it's not doing anything, you're not going to be peaceful there either. So you need to find this middle way where you're walking towards your goals and objectives through making wise decisions without forming your inner feelings on those things. So by eliminating your cravings, desires, attachments, where the mind's longing, yearning, wanting things to be a certain way, and learning how to gradually work towards goals and objectives, the mind can learn how to enjoy all aspects of life. But the mind doesn't know how to do this. It needs training. And that's where the fourth noble truth comes in. That the fourth noble truth explains the complete, perfect plan to be able to train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. And that's the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is 8 individual factors that you're dialing into your life more and more closely, that is going to guide you to the elimination of these cravings, this longing, this yearning, this wanting things to be a certain way. And the Buddha really targets the cravings, desires, attachments with things like breathing mindfulness meditation, which is what we just did, and then practicing generosity, where you're giving and sharing more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return, such as your time, effort, energy, and resources. And this is something that you can be doing frequently throughout your day, where you're sharing and giving with other people. And you're also practicing meditation frequently. The frequency of your meditation is more important than the duration. And it's the same thing with your generosity. The frequency is more important than the duration. There's other aspects to the Eightfold Path than just breathing mindfulness, meditation, and generosity. You wouldn't be able to eliminate all your cravings with just breathing mindfulness, meditation, and generosity. But these two things are helping to really target the cravings and soften up the mind so it's not longing, yearning, and you can build in this discipline where you can restrain the mind. So once you understand that the real problem is these discontent feelings and you have the power to eliminate them, no longer blaming other people for the feelings that you experience, then you have this ability to take control of your life where you can now train your mind to not be affected by what's happening in the external world. And you learn about the natural law of Kamma, that through making decisions with craving, anger, and this ignorance or this unknowing of true reality, it's producing unwholesome results in your life. This is where the broken relationships are happening and all the other difficulties and struggles, because the mind doesn't understand the natural law of Kamma, of cause and effect, or action and result. And whenever the mind's making decisions through those selfish desires, through the anger and hostility, through the confusion and misunderstanding, that ignorance, then the mind's going to keep experiencing difficulties and struggles. But when you're making decisions through the wholesome roots of generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, now you can experience wholesome results in your day-to-day life. So what merit is it's a unique type of generosity that when somebody's practicing generosity, helping others to gain access to the teachings of the Buddha through sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources without any expectation of anything in return, this is allowing other people to gain access to the teachings that is going to help them to eliminate their discontent feelings. So as somebody's eliminating more and more of their doubt about the teachings of whether or not they actually truly work or not, they can understand that, yes, these teachings absolutely work, because you can see that the mind is becoming more and more and more peaceful through your learning, investigation, and examining of the teachings, through the reflection to independently verify the teachings, and through your practice, integrating them into your day-to-day life. You can see that these teachings are working, that it's eliminating your discontentedness slowly but surely and all the suffering that it causes. So individuals oftentimes are benefiting from having received these teachings, that then they're interested in helping other people to gain access to the teachings. Today, I think we call this paying it forward, where you're benefiting from something now that you might be interested in helping other people to gain access to those same teachings. So the Buddha taught to make offerings to this virtuous community of practitioners, like teachers and ordained practitioners. And he referred to this as the Aryan Sangha. This is the noble community, or the group of people who are practicing his teachings very closely. Someone who's in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment, or practicing for the realization of the 4 stages of enlightenment, because it's those people who have the deep wisdom to be able to understand the teachings and then share it with others. And by supporting those individuals in their ability to share the teachings, it's helping you and it's helping all these other people in the world to be able to gain access to the teachings. So the Buddha, remember, he was a prince destined to become a king. He was very rich and very wealthy, but he walked away from all of that in order to be able to walk this path of homelessness, where he was able to make his way to enlightenment. You don't need to, give up your worldly life in order to be able to get to enlightenment, but that's one approach through the ordained path. So the Buddha was very rich and wealthy in the past, and he realized that that didn't lead to peace and joy. So he gave all that up, and he just accepted donations from his students to be able to help him to be able to share his teachings. And the things that he would accept are things like food, clothing, shelter, and medical care. The currency at the time was gold and silver, and he didn't accept this as part of his offerings. He didn't even accept land or other material objects like this that were a sign of wealth. That instead he just accepted the basic necessities to sustain his life. Where today people do accept financial contributions, because during the lifetime of the Buddha, he was living right alongside of his students. They would have him live with them for a week or a month or longer, and then he would help them to learn and grow and develop on the path to enlightenment. So there was always someone there to provide him food or water or clothing or shelter or medical care. Where today we don't always have that. So students do offer financial support in order to help a teacher to be able to share their teachings. So when you're practicing generosity in general with everybody, that is generosity. But when you're practicing generosity towards the continued sharing of the teachings of the Buddha, this is merit. So merit is essentially wholesome Kamma that is generated through one's generosity, and it's to help other people to be able to gain access to the teachings. So I created this diagram to be able to help students to understand the difference between generosity and merit. Both of these are actually very beneficial for the mind, but there's one merit that is producing more benefit in the world than just pure generosity. But you're going to need to practice both of these in order to be able to get to enlightenment. And the Buddha practiced generosity extensively, and that's why he knew that it was important to practice generosity in order to be able to get to enlightenment. So he taught generosity as a way to help you to be able to train your mind to let go and eliminate craving, desire, attachment. He didn't teach generosity in order to enrich himself because he was already rich before, and he actually walked away from that. But he knew that generosity was an important component of the path to enlightenment, so that's why he actually taught it. So here in this diagram, you can see at the base of this is the practice of generosity. And that's what every practitioner on the path to enlightenment is going to need to practice to a certain extent in order to be able to train your mind to let go. But when you're practicing generosity, you can ask yourself this question to determine whether or not this is merit or not. You can ask, was this an offering to a teacher to support the continued sharing of the Buddha's teachings, helping others to attain enlightenment? And if the answer is no, you're experiencing these benefits where you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment within your own mind. You're training your mind to let go because maybe you're sharing your gifts or whatever with your parents or your siblings or your coworkers or your neighbors or just somebody you don't even know, maybe like an orphanage or a homeless shelter or a women's abuse shelter or something like that. This is training your mind to let go. And it's also helping you to eliminate the selfishness in the mind, producing wholesome Kamma, so that you can get to the point where you can understand this interconnectivity in all beings. Because typically what the mind's doing in the unenlightened state when there's craving, desire, attachment involved is it thinks like, if I spend 3 hours doing this, I want this in return. Or if I spend 3 days doing this, I want this in return. But what you're doing with generosity is you're training your mind to give and share without any expectation of anything in return, where you don't want anything back. So you could practice generosity where you're like walking into a store and you see somebody behind you and you're opening the door for yourself. So you could open it for the people behind you too, right? And now the person walking in behind you, they may or may not say thank you. But if you're standing there with the expectation that they will say thank you and they don't say thank you, you're going to be frustrated or irritated or annoyed. This is because the mind is craving permanence. It's wanting every single person to say thank you. This isn't pure generosity. It's a craving, desire, attachment, and that's why it would lead to frustration or agitation or annoyance. You would like to get to the point where you're not even expecting a thank you. Now, of course, when we walk through a door, we probably will say thank you. That's something that we know that is wise to do. But not everybody practices that in the world because of impermanence. There could be somebody who's deep in thought, thinking about what they need out of this store, and they don't even see you standing there, right? Or they might even look you right in the face and not even say thank you, right? Not everybody's going to say thank you, but you need to be able to practice generosity because you understand that it's enhancing the quality of your mind. That's the only reason why you would practice generosity, not because you want something back, but because you know it's enhancing the quality of your mind. So any generosity that you practice, it's going to produce these beneficial results. But when you're practicing generosity that is for the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha, this is what's called merit. So now you're experiencing the benefits of eliminating craving, desire, attachment from your mind. You're eliminating that selfishness and producing wholesome Kamma. But there's this added benefit that other people are gaining access to the teachings. And now you and others are going to be able to receive guidance on the path. This is what's called merit. And now an individual could give and share their time, effort, energy, and resources in order to be able to help others to be able to get to the path to enlightenment and actually get access to the teachings. And this is what's called merit. Both of these are important, and you would need to practice both of these frequently, but it's merit that is going to be producing the highest level of quality of wholesome Kamma through practice of your generosity. And that's not to say that you shouldn't do these other things. It's that you need to live a balanced life. You need to not crave and desire and share extensively, But also, if you're all the way on the other side where you're never sharing, the mind would be quite selfish. So you need to come to the middle where you're willing to give and share your time, effort, energy, and resources frequently on a daily basis with the people around you. And then in some situations, you might decide to share in such a way that other people can gain access to these teachings, and that would be called merit. The Buddha shares these words here to help you understand the types of people that it would be wise to share in terms of producing merit and why producing merit is important. So I'll share this with you and I'll help you to understand what he's teaching. It's titled An Unsurpassed Field of Merit for the World. Monks, these 8 persons are worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What 8? The stream enterer, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of stream entry, the once returner, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of once returning, the non-returner, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of non-returning, the arahant, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of arahantship. These 8 persons, monks, are worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. So I'm going to pause here and just remind you guys what he's talking about here, that he's talking about the 4 stages of enlightenment. The first, second, and third stages of enlightenment are stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and arahant. And he's saying it would be wise to make offerings to these individuals, or anyone who's practicing for the realization of these particular attainments. Because if you can imagine, during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were thousands and thousands of people studying with him, but not everybody was studying very closely and understood the teachings very closely. So there was people on the outer fringes, and then there was like a core group of people who really understood the teachings well. And he was teaching to be able to make offerings to those individuals, because those individuals are the ones who are going to have the deepest wisdom about the teachings and be able to ensure that the teachings are continuing in the world. He goes on here, he says, the 4 practicing the way, the 4 established in the fruit. This is the upright community, composed in wisdom and virtuous behavior or moral conduct. So it wasn't only the Buddha who was sharing teachings during his lifetime. There were other people too, and they were claiming that it was their teachings that led to enlightenment. But he knew it was his community that understood the teachings that led to enlightenment. So he would refer to his community as the upright community or the straight community, as opposed to these other communities that weren't actually practicing the true teachings that led to enlightenment. Because he knew that they were the ones composed of wisdom and virtuous behavior. Because getting to enlightenment is to become a better and better human being. Because in the unenlightened state, we function fairly much like an animal, right? We're not animals, we're human beings, and we can evolve to being a better and better human being through training our mind. But we need wisdom to be able to do that and understand the wisdom of how to make wise decisions around our moral conduct so that we can be virtuous. Then he says, for people intent on sacrifice, for living beings seeking merit, making merit that ripens in the acquisitions, what is given to the community bears great fruit. What he's talking about here about making merit that ripens in the acquisitions, that is, if you come in contact with individuals that are in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment and you're making offerings to them, that means that you have the opportunity to gain wisdom about how to actually get to enlightenment yourself or into one of those 4 stages of enlightenment. So the acquisitions are the attainments of one of the 4 stages of enlightenment. And by you making merit, meaning you're making offerings to these individuals, it provides you an opportunity to be able to learn and grow and develop with the guidance of those individuals and the wisdom that they're sharing. When he says what is given to the community bears great fruit, what he's referring to here is that whenever you're making offerings to an individual who's sharing the teachings, they should be using a small portion of that for their own needs like food, clothing, shelter, medical care, things like this. But there should be things that are coming back to the community. You should see like classes, courses, retreats. These are things that we see today that they shouldn't cost the community anything. Anybody and everybody should be able to take part in these learning opportunities. You should see a center that is available for students to come and learn and grow and develop. You should see that these things are taking place. Whereas if there was somebody who was, say, using drugs and alcohol or gambling, or they were enriching themselves with Fendi sunglasses and, Gucci bag or private airplanes and things like this. This isn't what the Buddha taught. That anybody who's receiving support from the community, there should be things coming back to the community to be able to help them. And here in Thailand, they take this very seriously. There was actually a recent person about maybe 9 years ago, that he was thought to be using donations from the community in order to enrich himself. And the Thai people found out about this, and they went to go arrest him. And he had escaped and went to the USA. And the Thai police put out an Interpol warrant, and they had the U.S. police arrest him. He was arrested in California. He was extradited back to Thailand, and he went through the court system. He was found guilty of fraud, of using the donations of the public to enrich himself, and they actually sentenced him to 20 years in prison. So I know that in some places, people are used to seeing people use teachings like this to enrich themselves, but this isn't what the Buddha actually taught. And anybody who's doing that, you can know right away they're not practicing the teachings very closely. So you should be able to see that there's things coming back to the community, that they should be using a small portion of what is being provided to help them to be able to sustain their life. But then there should be these opportunities to learn and grow and develop coming back to the community. Because if somebody puts a price on their classes and courses, this right away blocks out people who are less fortunate to be able to get the very help that they need. People who are struggling and less fortunate in the world, they're the individuals who need this wisdom to be able to help them to grow and develop. So by having a community of people that are willing to support the teachings, not only is it helping you to gain access to those teachings, but it's helping countless other people too. Where a teacher who's either enlightened or very close to it, they would understand that if they put a price tag on their classes, courses, and retreats, right away they're blocking out people that need this guidance the most. So by sharing these teachings in a way that is offered openly and freely to all people, then there's this benefit and this great fruit that's coming back to the community, that everybody and anybody can receive access to the teachings regardless of their financial situation. So the Buddha teaches these practices of generosity, not just only sharing with the people around you, but practicing to produce merit, because it's helping the practitioner to get closer and closer to enlightenment by eliminating the cause of discontentedness, by eliminating craving, desire, attachment, where the mind can live open-handedly. The Buddha describes this as eliminating the stain of selfishness. He refers to craving, desire, attachment in the unwillingness to practice generosity as selfishness, and he describes it as a stain. As an individual gets closer and closer to enlightenment, they're starting to eliminate their doubt that by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you've seen enough progress to the condition of your mind in your life that you'll get to the point where you have no doubt about these teachings. And that doesn't occur through blind belief or faith. It comes through examination and investigation of the teachings. And as you're doing that, you're independently verifying the teachings through your reflection. And then when you're practicing and you're seeing the discontentedness gradually diminish, this is helping an individual to eliminate more and more of their doubt, and they may be interested to help other people to gain access to the teachings. There's something that is here in Thailand and other parts of the Buddhist world where if you provide an offering to an ordained practitioner, they may think that your offering and the benefit of that offering should be transferred to somebody else. And they have this little ceremony that they do, a little ritual that they do, where they pour out this little bit of water. And then it's thought that as you pour out this little bit of water, it's transferring the benefits of your merit to somebody else. This isn't actually possible. If you understand the benefits of merit is improvement to the condition of your mind and enhancement to the quality of your mind, you understand that you can't transfer that benefit to anybody else. So this is a misunderstanding that has come about after the lifetime of the Buddha, that people think that they can transfer their merit from one person to the other. So it's kind of like dad or uncle or mom or sisters. They could be doing all these unwholesome things in their life. They would die, and then the people who are still alive would do all these good things to help them. this isn't possible. This isn't what the Buddha taught. If you remember back to the natural law of Kamma last week, where the Buddha talked about you're the owner, the heir, the originator of your Kamma, and whatever you do, wholesome or unwholesome, you're going to experience those benefits. So you can't create wholesome Kamma and then, give it to somebody else. It's not like that. So what merit is doing is helping you to enhance the quality of your mind, and it's helping to benefit other people through getting access to the teachings. The Buddha teaches that if you're going to make an offering, that it's wise to do so keeping in mind these 3 things for the donor and 3 things for the recipient. That if you're going to make an offering, that you would like to be joyful before giving, you would like to be calm and confident in the act of giving, and then afterwards you would still like to be joyful. He's talking to a female here because she asked him this question, so he's using the pronoun she, but this applies to everybody. Essentially what he's teaching you is how to protect your mind when you're making offerings. That prior to making an offering, you should look at what it is that you're planning to do and be joyful in that offering, putting some thought into it and not overextending yourself, and ensuring that you feel good about the offering that you're going to make. And then when you're making an offering to a teacher or a temple or an ordained practitioner or something like this, the mind can be calm and confident during the act of giving. And then afterwards, the mind can remain joyful, because an individual could have remorse after they give. They could be like, oh, I gave too much. Why did I give so much? Now I don't have what I need. Or someone could say, oh, I didn't give enough. I was so selfish. Why didn't I give more? So in this situation, the mind is not joyful after giving. So you would like to ensure that the mind is joyful before giving and after giving, and then calm and confident in the act of giving. And then in terms of the individuals to make offerings to, the Buddha shares that you should look for individuals who are free of craving, anger, and ignorance. This would be an enlightened being if they're free of craving, anger, and ignorance, or practicing for the removal of craving, anger, and ignorance. And you may not be able to discern this early in your practice. So the Buddha gives guidance on this to be able to help you to be able to determine who would be wise for you to make offerings to. Of course, if somebody is using drugs and alcohol and gambling and spending things excessively, these aren't individuals that you would be interested in supporting. And that's why it's helpful to know a bit about the individual that you might be choosing to make offerings to. But he also suggests for you to look at the condition of the person's mind, not in a judgmental way. You're not looking down on the individuals and trying to judge them, but instead you're using discernment or wise decision making, because whatever offerings you share, either your time, effort, energy, or resources, these are things that could contribute to your life. So if you're going to share them with other people, you would like to make sure that they're going to be of benefit to other people. So what you would like to do is look for an individual whose mind is focused and concentrated. This is what the Buddha shares, is ensure that they're not muddle-minded. Muddle-mindedness would be to have a lack of concentration or focus or clarity, because if anybody's practicing the teachings of the Buddha closely, they would have a very clear mind, because they would have eliminated the pollutions out of their mind. If someone has a polluted mind and they're not practicing the teachings very closely, their mind's going to be lacking concentration and focus and clarity. So you would see for someone who's practicing closely, who has deep wisdom about the teachings, that they'd be able to easily talk about the teachings and help guide other people to enlightenment, because they've actually done that work themselves and they don't have the pollutions of mind. So they would be able to speak about the teachings very clear, very concise, and very precisely. So that's some of the ways that the Buddha taught to be able to observe the quality of someone's mind and to look at their practice, ensure that they're practicing virtuous moral conduct. Because if someone's into many unwholesome things, like I mentioned, like, using drugs and alcohol or gambling or things like this, any kind of offering that you're sharing is going to go to those kinds of things, and you're not interested in that. Or if somebody is indulging in pleasures for themselves, you would like to ensure that your offering is not going to those kinds of things. That yes, they're going to need some amount of support to sustain their life, but there should be support in things that are coming back to the community to be able to help them learn and grow and develop in their day-to-day practice. So we've got some questions coming in. So I'm going to pause and see what questions you guys have. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. I have some more to share with you guys here, but I'll just answer the questions that are coming in and then we can progress forward from here. So it looks like Janae has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
So earlier when it said like the fruits of the different attainments, is this basically referring to like the natural law of Kamma of you reap what you sow, and that's kind of what he means by fruit?
Exactly. The fruit is like the benefit. So if you were making offerings to people who are in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment, the benefit of that or the fruit of that is that you're going to be able to gain wisdom to now help you get to one of those 4 stages of enlightenment.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure, you're welcome. All right, looks like Marcy has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Teacher David. So I have been working with my local library to sometime in the spring set up where we're going to work with yourself to have an introduction of your books. Now, with that, I know that there's generosity in there, but is that considered a merit, or is that just pure generosity?
No, that would be merit, because like you're spending your time, effort, energy, and resources to go to the library, to set up a talk, to make the teachings available to other people. This would be merit as well.
Okay. Thank you, Teacher David.
Sure. Mike is asking a question in Zoom. He says, why do so many Buddhist traditions, including the Thai tradition, bother to continue to engage in the superstitious practice of transferring merit? And why do the Ajahns actively support it rather than putting an end to it? Because of their lack of wisdom. They don't understand that these things aren't part of the teachings of the Buddha. Right now, you're learning the true teachings of the Buddha based on his original words, but not everybody's learning that. There's a vast majority of the world that doesn't learn these original teachings. So these things have been handed down from person to person to person to person. And now let's just say you're a monk somewhere in remote Thailand at a temple, and you've been a monk there for 30 or 40 years. And now people are giving you donations. They're doing these rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. And now these people have been teaching for 30 or 40 years that if you give these donations, they're going to do this ceremony. And now they're going to be able to get some kind of benefit. Well, now if this person that is an ordained practitioner all of a sudden starts realizing the true teachings of the Buddha and they change what they're doing, that means they're going to lose face. That means their personal existence view, their ego is going to take a hit, because for 30, 40 years, they've been leading this whole entire community in these rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, and they're going to have minimize their ego enough to realize that what they've been doing is unwise, and that they're not craving and attached to this money. And these are very deeply held attachments with the ego and being attached to the money. They're not maybe willing to admit to themselves and to others that what they were doing was unwise and they didn't know the true teachings of the Buddha. Instead, they're just going to continue to collect their donations for these ceremonies and rituals that they're doing and just move along with their day, instead of doing the real work that it takes to be able to learn and understand the teachings and then share that with other people. So it looks like there's more coming in here. Mike is saying, but these are trained monks doing this. They're trained, but they're not necessarily trained in the original words of the Buddha. See, your mind probably thinks that everybody who wears an orange robe and shaves their head must be practicing the teachings of the Buddha. They must have learned from the original words of the Buddha. But that's your mind not understanding the impermanent nature of the world, that not everybody has learned and practiced the teachings, including ordained practitioners. Right? If you were responsible for a temple, you'd probably ensure that everybody's learning based on the original words of the Buddha. But that's based on the training that you've received through these words of the Buddha. But not everybody is like that. There's these people that have grown up in remote Thailand. They go to the temple with mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles, and all they've ever seen is rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship growing up. And they think that this is actually part of the Buddhist teachings, and they don't have wisdom that tells them otherwise. So they haven't taken the time to actively learn through the original words, because the average temple here in Thailand, the average Thai person doesn't have access to the original words of the Buddha, because they're in 45 volumes of books that are this thick, And that's about 3 months of the salary of an average Thai person. And you probably don't own any book collections worth 3 months of your salary, and neither do the Thai people. So they've just been learning through this oral tradition, which is very easy to change and modify either overtly or inadvertently throughout the years. And one of the things that I'm doing, and there's some other teachers in Thailand that are doing this, is starting to share the original words of the Buddha. So there are places here in Thailand where you can go and learn in Thai the original words of the Buddha. But unless people know about those things, it doesn't happen. There isn't just one person sitting at the top of Buddhism and controlling what everybody should or shouldn't be doing. You're in your own independent practice, making choices about where you would like to learn. So you're benefiting from learning with the original words of the Buddha, but that's very rare. Even in Thailand, even in the Western world, in English, it's very rare for someone to learn with the original words of the Buddha. Steve is asking, teacher, as I understand it, those who are in a stage of enlightenment do not necessarily make this public. Is merit considered to be contributing to someone in a stage of enlightenment, or someone who is simply on the path to a stage of enlightenment? So yeah, someone who has attained any of the 4 stages of enlightenment, they're not going to profess that to anybody. But the more that a individual, like a household practitioner, learns and grows and develops, you can determine whether someone's in a particular stage of enlightenment or not. And as you're making offerings to, say, someone in the first stage of enlightenment or the second stage of enlightenment, that's creating more and more of an environment for that person to be able to continue to learn and grow and develop, so that they can get closer to enlightenment, and then they can share teachings with you to help you get closer to enlightenment. So the way you might think about it is like there's this womb. The womb of a woman is like the very best place for an individual to grow and develop and to become a better and better human being. And the womb of the temple is created by household practitioners choosing to share offerings that creates this womb. And now people can enter and exit out of that womb. As an ordained practitioner, you're going to be living there. As a household practitioner, you can come in and out and be able to learn through classes, courses, and retreats. But this womb is created by all of us choosing to make offerings for creation of this womb. And nowadays, we can think of our womb as being here online, because there's things like Zoom and lights and live streaming equipment that is needed in order to be able to share these teachings. And there's this womb that is created for people to come into and learn and grow and develop and go out of. And now through sharing and giving with generosity, producing merit, it makes these teachings available to other people. So as you're making these offerings, it's helping that individual to get closer and closer to enlightenment through growing and developing. And now you have the ability to also learn and grow and develop. Because if we didn't support individuals to be able to move into their practice 100% by giving up worldly life and having dedicated teachers, then we wouldn't have the ability to gain that deep wisdom. Because like if, for example, if I was on the side running a business and operating a business, and that was what was sustaining my life and supporting my family, then I would be more interested in doing that than perhaps sharing the teachings of the Buddha. But for somebody having given up that and now choosing to solely share the teachings of the Buddha, that individual still has expenses that they have to meet. And it's a community of students that is choosing to help that individual to be able to now create this womb for them to be able to grow and develop and learn and get as close to enlightenment as possible, if not enlightened, so that then they have the deep wisdom to share those teachings with other people. So it is helping that individual to be able to let go of this worldly life and get closer to enlightenment, and then be able to share that wisdom of what it took for them to get to enlightenment with others. Let's see if we have any questions on Facebook or YouTube. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions on Facebook or YouTube. So let's go forward. I have some more to share with you here. That when the Buddha was teaching, there was a time where his students asked him, like, Can you boil down for us essentially what we can be doing on a day-to-day basis in order to make our way to enlightenment? Like, what are the things that we should be doing each individual day to make our way to enlightenment? Because of course, the Eightfold Path, the 5 precepts, and all these other things are very detailed, and you're going to need to learn all of those things in order to make your way to enlightenment. But when you're first getting started, you'd like to know, what can I focus on right up front in order to be able to start making my way to enlightenment, and then do that daily throughout my journey to enlightenment. So the Buddha shared that it would be wise to practice generosity, moral conduct, and meditation. This is called the way of practice. These are the 3 things that you're doing every single day in order to be able to make your way to enlightenment. So generosity is that giving and sharing, that frequent giving. And you can give and share with anybody and everybody. When you're giving and sharing to help the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha, that's merit. But let's just say you came out of your house and you saw your neighbor's trash has been blown all over their yard. Maybe you have some time and you start picking up the trash, and then you take care of that for them. And you don't even have to tell them that you did this, right? This would be a way for you to not have any expectation of anything in return. This is just like doing it in anonymity, right? Anonymously, so that others don't know that you've actually done this particular thing, where you're just doing it out of the kindness of your heart. And this is going to enhance the quality of your mind to practice generosity. But in some cases, you might choose to practice generosity in the direction of helping the teachings of the Buddha be accessed by other people, and then that would be merit. And then the Buddha teaches you to practice moral conduct, where you're improving your speech, your actions, and your livelihood. Because as long as you're putting harm out through your moral conduct, this harm is going to have to come back to you. So if the pipe has busted and there's oil spilling all over the world, you would like to shut down that oil pipe and make sure that you're no longer spewing oil over the world. So it's the same kind of thing, that if you're putting out harshness and hostility and bitterness through your moral conduct, you'd like to shut that down. So the Buddha teaches you on a daily basis to be working on your moral conduct and improving that. And then you would like to be frequently practicing meditation 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more. And this together, the generosity, the moral conduct, and the meditation is working to help you gradually make your way to enlightenment. And generosity and meditation are the same, in fact, in terms of frequency is more important than duration, right? So if it was a matter of practicing one meditation for 30 minutes or 2 for 15, you're going to get more benefit out of the 2 for 15. So I would recommend you do that and then gradually expand that 15 minutes. Your generosity is the same way. Your frequency is more important than the amount. So if it was a matter of donating, say, $500 a year to an orphanage or $1 a day, the $1 a day is actually going to be more beneficial because your mind's having to let go more frequently. Let go, let go, let go. Here in Thailand, pretty much everywhere you go, there's donation boxes everywhere, and you could be putting some small change that maybe equals $1 or $2, but then like 2 or 3 times a day, you're having to let go, let go, let go, let go. This is really wise for the mind. Or say like you take your clothes out of the dryer and you see there's a rip and a tear, and now you get frustrated. You can see you're attached to your clothes. You would like to start giving and sharing your clothes in order to train your mind to let go of this attachment. So maybe you donate some of your clothes, or you share your clothes with other people. Or say notice you're attached to money. You would like to share that with other people. Or maybe you're attached to your house and you don't want anybody staying in your house. It would be wonderful for you to allow some guests to come over and stay in your house. And this is going to train your mind to let go of these things. So as you're practicing generosity, this is training your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. As you're training with moral conduct, that's training your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. And so is the meditation. But you wouldn't be able to learn any of these things if we weren't practicing merit to be able to bring the teachings into the world in a way that's going to help all people to learn them. So this is called the way of practice, and is the way that you would like to simplify your practice and really hone in on this really closely. And this is the way that you can frequently practice to improve these 3 things. Then in terms of what the Buddha shares in other parts of his teachings related to generosity, there's some various things that he shares. I'm going to help you guys to learn these. He has this one teaching called, "If beings knew the results of giving and sharing." This is very impactful. If you understand it, it was at least impactful to me, and maybe it'll be helpful for you too. He says, "Monks, If beings knew, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, nor would the stain of selfishness obsess them and take root in their minds. Even if it were their last bite, their last mouthful, they would not eat without having shared it, if there was someone to share it with. But because beings do not know, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they eat without having given, and the stain of selfishness obsesses them and takes root in their minds. So what he's saying about that he knows that other people don't know is the results, which is the enlightened mind. That beings do not know the peace and the joy that exist in the enlightened mind. But if beings knew the peace and joy that the Buddha knew, and they understood that this was a result of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, and the stain of selfishness wouldn't obsess their minds. But because beings do not know the peace and the joy of the enlightened mind as he knows, and that it's the results of giving and sharing that will help to produce that, they eat without having given, and the stain of selfishness obsesses them and takes root in their minds. So around food, we tend to really hoard this a lot in the unenlightened state. It's kind of like an animal hoarding food. In the West, we tend to kind of load up our plate. We sit down and we eat that plate. Here in Asia, we don't tend to eat that way. Usually all the food goes in the middle and then everybody shares it. Because if you're a family of 4 or 6 or 8, maybe you're in remote Thailand and you don't really have very many resources and you don't necessarily have enough food for everybody. So the food goes in the middle of the table and now everybody takes 2 or 3 spoonfuls and puts it on their plate and they start eating those 2 or 3 spoonfuls. And then they take another 2 or 3 spoonfuls and then they eat that. And slowly but surely this food goes down. And at the end of the meal, everybody might not be full, but everybody has had a little bit of food. Right? And this is a way to give and share. So if you would like to kind of implement things like this in your home, you might decide to put food in the middle of the table and now everybody kind of shares. This is a great way to teach the mind to share. Or say you go get a bag of potato chips for yourself and you pop this open, send it around to your friends. If your friends are sitting there in a circle, send it around to your friends and let them have a potato chip if that's what they choose to do. And if the bag comes back and it only has 1 potato chip, just eat your potato chip and then go get another bag. You know, it wasn't that expensive. You can just get another bag, right? So this is a way to give and share with your food because the mind tends to hold on to this very tightly. This will help to eliminate craving, desire, attachment in the mind. This is a teaching from the Buddha about the 5 benefits of sharing. He says, monks, there are these 5 benefits of giving. What 5? 1 is dear and agreeable to many people. Wholesome persons go in large numbers to one or to you. 1 acquires a wholesome reputation. 1 is not deficient in householder's duties. With the breakup of the body after death, 1 is reborn in a good destination, in a heavenly world. These are the 5 benefits of giving. By giving, 1 becomes dear. 1 follows the duty of the wholesome. The wholesome, mentally disciplined monks always go in large numbers to 1. They teach 1 the teachings that dispels all discontentedness, having understood which, the taintless 1 here attains nibbana, or enlightenment. So here, most of these benefits are really self-explanatory, but again, when you're practicing the teachings, you're not interested in practicing generosity because you want these benefits. Because in that situation, you're not actually practicing pure generosity, so it's not going to produce these benefits anyway. But remember, the Buddha is teaching you the natural law of Kamma. He's showing you this cause and effect so that you can see that as you practice generosity and you're experiencing these benefits coming back to you, you'll understand reason why. Because you're going to need to know the reason why these things are occurring so you can see this cause and effect relationship between the generosity and what you're experiencing. So you're going to experience these kind of benefits as a result of giving and sharing. I'd like to hone in on this number 5 for a moment, because here you can see the Buddha is talking about by practicing generosity that there's this potential to be reborn in the heavenly realm. It's important to understand that that's not the goal of the teachings of the Buddha, to be reborn in the heavenly realm, because those beings still need to get to enlightenment. They're still in the cycle of rebirth. That's not a permanent destination. And those beings tend to be complacent and they actually don't make their way to enlightenment. They're actually reborn in other realms. But the same things that lead to enlightenment, if you fall short of enlightenment for any reason, they tend to be leading to the rebirth in the heavenly world. So that's essentially what he's saying here. He's not suggesting to you to aspire to be reborn in the heavenly world and now give a bunch of offerings in order to be able to get that. It's like dangling a carrot, right? He's not doing that. He's just sharing with you the cause and effect. He's just showing you the true reality that if for some reason you fall short of enlightenment, if you're practicing generosity, there is this birth in the heavenly world that can occur. So you'll see this in the teachings of the Buddha, that when he's talking about generosity, or even when he's talking about moral conduct, he'll occasionally put in there to help you see that there's this potential rebirth in the heavenly world by having improved moral conduct or generosity or these other things. But just understand that that's not the goal. The goal is to get to enlightenment in this life so that you're not experiencing rebirth. This is a teaching from the Buddha as well. It's titled Gifts of Teachings is Superior Than Gifts of Material Things. Monks, there are these two kinds of gifts, a gift of material things and a gift of the teachings. Of these two kinds of gifts, this is supreme, a gift of the teachings. There are these two kinds of sharing, sharing of material things and sharing of the teachings. Of these two kinds of sharing, this is supreme, sharing of the teachings. There are these two kinds of assistance, assistance with material things and assistance with the teachings. Of these two kinds of assistance, this is supreme, assistance with the teachings. So essentially the very best gift or sharing or assistance that you could give to somebody is to get access to these teachings, because that's what's going to eliminate all the anger, sadness, frustration, the guilt, the shame, the stress, the anxiety. And the more that you see that this is the truth, then you might be willing to share these teachings with other people. But you're not necessarily equipped to be able to share these teachings with other people as a teacher. So what the Buddha is saying is giving a gift of these teachings is the very best thing you could do. And that's what merit is essentially doing, is you're giving this gift of the teachings. And the way that I think about this is that if you could press button A and your family would stay bitter and harsh and hostile for the rest of their life, or you could press button B and they would become peaceful and joyful for the rest of their life, which button would you press? Button A or button B? Well, of course, this is an easy decision, right? You'd press button B. But unfortunately, it's not a button that we can press in order for our family members to become peaceful and joyful. They have to do the work. But they can't do that work if the teachings aren't available, right? So for now and all future generations, these teachings are only available if people make them available. And that's what merit does, is it makes them available for other people to be able to access them, including you, so that you can have access to these teachings as well. And then lastly, I'll share this and open up to any all questions that you guys have related to this topic. This one is titled Mutual Support Between Monks, Brahmins, and Householders. Let me first explain to you what a Brahmin is. A Brahmin is an individual who, during the lifetime of the Buddha, is like a Hindu priest. These exist today as well. And during the lifetime of the Buddha, there was this very strong caste system in place. And it was thought that if you were born into a Brahmin family, then you were a holy person. And about 15% of society were Brahmin. And then the other 85% of society were taught that if you would like to improve your life, you needed to go to a Brahmin, pay them money. They're going to do a ceremony and a ritual on your behalf, and then you're supposed to go back home and your life was going to get better. So this bred a lot of corruption, because you would come to the Brahmin today and say, hey, I'd like you to do the ceremony. And they'd say, okay, it'd be $5. And then they do it, you go home, and then you come back the next day and it's like, hey, I'd like you to do the ceremony. And they're like, oh, it's $10. Well, why? Because I said so, right? And you have no recourse because they were taught that you can't do anything to improve your life. It was these individuals that were responsible for doing these ceremonies and rituals that was going to make your life better. So the Buddha knew that that wasn't true, and he taught that it was cultivation of wisdom and in training your mind and making wise decisions through the natural law of Kamma that's going to lead to improvement into your life. But nonetheless, these Brahmin were still existing in the world, and they would frequently come and learn the teachings of the Buddha to be able to learn and understand how to guide people through moral conduct. So even though they were doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, they were teaching a little bit of moral conduct. So they became kind of like pseudo students of the Buddha. So here the Buddha is talking to his students. He says, monks, Brahmins and householders are very helpful to you. They provide you with the requisites of robes, alms food, lodgings, and medicines in time of sickness. And you monks are very helpful to Brahmins and householders as you teach them the teachings that are good in the beginning, the middle, and the end, with the correct meaning and wording. And you proclaim the spiritual life in its fulfillment, in complete purity. Thus, monks, this spiritual life is lived with mutual support for the purpose of crossing the flood and making a complete end of discontentedness. So again, what the Buddha is doing here is he's showing you this connection between the teachers and the students, that there's this womb that is getting created by the students to be able to allow individuals to be able to get deep in their practice and be able to cultivate wisdom to then share it with the students. And now there's this mutual support between both communities, that the teachers are sharing teachings to be able to help students to be able to improve their life. And now students are learning the wisdom of what it takes to do that. And now they're helping these individuals to be able to now share the teachings so that more and more people can be able to get to enlightenment. And I'd like to let you guys know that while this is what the Buddha taught and this is what I practice, that I've given up worldly life and I dedicate all my time to helping students get to enlightenment, I never have an expectation that students will support what I'm doing. There's definitely students who do support me, and I always like to pause and take a moment to let you know how appreciative I am of your support, because it's your support that allows me to be able to share these teachings with you and countless other people. Without that support, I wouldn't be able to do what I do, and I can help anybody and everybody in the world. There's people all over the world that I'm able to help to learn these teachings. You know, there's people in small villages in Africa that are making maybe $50 a month and living off of that. And they can learn these teachings with me. I don't want anything from them. I don't expect anything from those people. I just share teachings regardless of whether somebody's supporting me or not. There's people that have sent me emails from remote islands off the coast of Africa that tell me that they don't even have a library on their island, but they have the internet and they can access the books that I share. And it really helps them to be able to learn and grow and understand the path to enlightenment. So I have a lot of appreciation and gratitude for the people who do support me. So thank you so much for all your support. But just understand that there's never an expectation on my side that a student will support me. I'm here to help you regardless of any kind of support that you may or may not offer. I teach all students exactly the same, whether they provide support or not. But your support does surely help me to be able to do things like purchase the things that I need in order to sustain my life, and also to be able to share these teachings. And over the years, I've been gradually developing more and more ability to be able to share the teachings and finding more and more ways to be able to do that through online and in-person classes, courses, and retreats. So thank you all for supporting me. This mutual support is what the Buddha taught. It's been in place ever since his lifetime, and I continue to practice that. And thank you for any kind of support and offerings that you provide in order to allow me to be able to do this. So what I'll do is I'll open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to this topic. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask me any questions that you like. All right, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do is just end our class here by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you so much. I appreciate your interest to learn and practice these teachings. As you guys would like to learn more, I teach on Sundays and Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Thai time and 9 p.m. Thai time. That's the group learning program. So next class, which is on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing meditation with students and then opening up to any and all questions that you guys would like to ask. And next Sunday, we're going to be in chapter 11 of our book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This is titled Meditation, Developing Your Practice. This is where I'm going to teach you all the ins and outs of meditation. I'm going to explain to you the 4 types of meditation that the Buddha taught and why you would be interested to learn those and how to actually do them. And this is going to be a great class to get all your questions asked about meditation. That's going to be on Sunday. And then each Wednesday, I'm sharing meditation with you guys, guiding you in either breathing mindfulness meditation or loving kindness meditation, and opening up to any and all questions that you'd like to ask. Each Sunday, I'm going chapter by chapter in this book. And you can get a version of this book by downloading it from our website for free. Go to buddhadailywisdom.com and click on free books. Or you can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed versions on Amazon, or you can get them here at the temple in Chiang Mai by just reimbursing us for our printing cost. So thank you all so much for being interested to learn and practice these teachings. Feel free to reach out anytime you like for questions, through asking questions in live classes, through posting those in the Facebook group. You can send me a private message, or you can schedule personal guidance. Take care and have a lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Perhaps we'll see you in a future class. Be well. Sawadee-ka. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.